Building a great company is a marathon, not a sprint. Each week, Krista Inkeman and the team at Tank New Media take on growth challenges, explore technology, and interview business leaders that are always upping their game. If you're ready to build scalable systems to drive your business forward, this podcast is for you.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for listening. Today, we have Jonathan Lavender with us. He is the managing partner of Pack Leader USA. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't we start off by just telling everybody kind of who Pack Leader is?
Sure. Well, Pack Leader USA was established in 2010. Pack Leader Taiwan's been around for about 20 years now, but Pack Leader USA was established to really handle the North and Central American markets.
Okay.
And we've, it's been about 10 years now, and we focus on really trying to stock as much equipment as possible for the marketplace for what makes sense. A lot of the competition, they'll actually build each project specific to the application, and for us, we've identified certain, a line of equipment that really matches well with the marketplace.
Sure.
And allows us to really keep inventory and sell products faster and more efficiently.
Sure. So what are some of the equipment you have in your line?
So primarily the most popular is wraparound. So anything on a round container, we do horizontal wraparound, vertical wraparound, top and bottom, just anything with a label that gets applied to it. We can, we have equipment that can apply it.
Perfect. And you've expanded your line recently.
Yeah, we have. We're getting into filling, capping. So with the labeling business model where we stock a lot of equipment and componentry to be able to customize solutions in a quicker manner, we're taking that into the filling and capping side. So the idea there is that we stock, a core line of products, whether it be filling, capping, labeling, and we have the componentry, conveyors, product handling to be able to provide a solution quickly.
Gotcha.
So most of our competition, they're going to be let's say 12 to 14 to even up to 20 weeks.
Oh, wow.
We can, our target is on the labeling right now is about 4 to 6 weeks. Filling and capping, we're probably going to be somewhere between 8 to 10 to 12 weeks.
Sure. And so you kind of describe it as, a modular solution. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means? Yeah.
So modularity, it's basically the design of the equipment. So when you take a step back and you look at how it's built, you've got electronics, you've got a conveyor. On the labeling equipment, you've got label heads. On the filling equipment, you have different componentry that allows you to fill the product. And then on the capping side, various ways to cap it. So being modular allows us to customize things in a lot quicker fashion. So if we stock those components on the shelf, we can roll the main assembly frame over and then modify based on what the application calls for.
Okay.
Yep.
So how'd you kind of get started in this business?
So Pack Leader Taiwan had tried to, sell into the U.S. marketplace for quite a while, and I actually went to work for a company that represented their product line. And the company I worked for didn't do a good job of selling and marketing the equipment. And, at the end of the day, I knew what it would take to make the line successful. But the more established people within that business really couldn't understand that, I guess. And so some relationships were severed. I had the opportunity to open Pack Leader USA and partnered with Pack Leader Taiwan in 2010, and we started small. We had a 3,600 square foot warehouse, which is actually decent to start with, but compared to where we are now, it's small.
Sure. So how big are you guys now?
We're probably all the buildings combined around 50,000 square feet.
Okay.
Roughly. Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
How many employees do you think you have?
We're about 30 right now, roughly. 30. Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
So you're moving a lot of equipment through there.
We are, yeah. A lot of gray hairs and headaches. Yeah. Yep.
So you do kind of all the way. So you go from sales all the way through service. So you are still servicing machines after you put them out into the marketplace.
Right. Correct. So, yeah, service is a big part of it. Starting out, I obviously realized that service and parts were important, but as you progress, you realize how much more important it is because when we start to differentiate ourselves from the competition, customers, they want to buy a good product for a good price, but they also have to make sure that it's going to be supported from a service standpoint
Sure.
and parts. Because if it's cheap up front and it's easy to get, it may cost them on the backside. So we try to be a good balance of all those things, the competitive price on the equipment, making sure the quality is up there where it needs to be. And then also on the service and the parts, being able to provide not only parts for a fast lead time, but having service techs that can go out and actually fix the equipment if something happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you just kind of like encapsulated like everything that Pack Leader kind of stands for and
Right.
really kind of how you operate,
Mhm.
you know, as a business.
Right. Right.
And then kind of on top of that, your philosophy of making sure things are in stock so people have a short lead time. That seems
Mhm.
to be, you know, from what we hear, that's one of the biggest pain points that manufacturers have is having that downtime
Right.
in their
Right.
lines.
Yeah, that is a big thing. And we actually dedicated an entire building to parts. And so we just bought that a year and a half ago. And we didn't really think that we were going to fill the building up that fast, but it's almost completely full
Wow.
of components and parts. And we have a team of, I think, 8 people just in that building. And, you know, most companies are afraid of that investment, but if we don't invest in that area, we're not going to get the repeat customers.
Sure.
And we realize that. So we want to make sure we invest in the right areas.
It seems like you have a pretty, and aggressive might not be the right word, but like investment back into the business. It seems like you're very serious about that and you make that a big point.
Yeah, almost too much. Yeah, we haven't really taken a lot out of the company. We reinvest everything. You know, there's a lot of companies, a lot of books that I've read that have talked about companies that can reinvest up to 80-90% of the retained earnings. The payback is just
Wow.
really big. And so we try to stick to those numbers, and it has helped us quite a bit because human nature is you know, a business owner may start a company in 3 to 4 to 5 years. If they've had some success, they feel like they want to start pulling that money out.
Yeah.
And they don't realize how big of an impact that can have on the success of the business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely just kind of allowing you to move forward, allowing you to do the
Right.
things that
Right.
are going to help you grow.
Yeah, exactly.
For
Yep.
sure. So you mentioned, you know, kind of reading some of those business books and those types of things. Like, how do you really kind of stay on top of what's happening in your industry? It seems like with labeling, you're kind of having to be on top of what's happening across multiple industries and trends and things that are going on.
Right. Well, trade shows are a good way to kind of connect and catch up. You can see some stuff and, you know, obviously talk to people.
Sure.
Fortunately for us in today's economy, we have YouTube and other places where you can check up on your competition pretty easily. I usually do it at night because
Yeah.
the shows that my wife watches aren't the same thing that I like. So I'll just get YouTube on my phone and start keeping tabs on competition.
Oh,
So,
good idea.
Yeah.
Definitely. So where do you kind of see Pack Leader going over the next 5 or 10 years as a company?
So we want to keep growing on the labeling side like we have. You know, as far as the filling and capping we touched on, we feel like we've become experts on the labeling side. We want to become truly experts on the filling and capping side and being able to offer a complete end-to-end packaging line for a, you know, fairly quick lead time, have a good product at a good price. I think based on those additions to what we're doing, I think we could double or triple where
wow.
we're at now, if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears just a little bit here. Let's talk maybe a little bit about, you know, some of your biggest growth challenges that you've had. So you've been doing this for a while now. You know, as you grow, different parts of the business kind of change and break as you go. What's kind of been one of the hardest things you've had to address over the years?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I would say people, employees.
Yeah.
You know, starting out, you kind of underestimate that portion of it, and to be able to build a good team and keep everybody on the same page is really the hardest thing for us. And fortunately, we have found a lot of good people along the way. There's been a few that have been tough. It's something that I've learned where if somebody comes into the organization that isn't a good fit, it's better to just, you know, kind of cut ties and move on. But I think that's one of the hardest things. The amount of growth we've had, I would say the real estate portion of it is incredibly difficult to keep up with because, you know, our business model is really heavy on the physical inventory. So as we grow, we've always been out of room. So that can be tough. And, you know, fortunately, we have a very good partner, Pack Leader Taiwan, and they've been exceptional. And I think being able to partner with a company like that has helped out a lot. But I'd say probably personnel and real estate, you know, trying to keep up with the growth and putting the right people in the right place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you found that maybe you hire the right person, but you initially put them in the wrong seat or vice versa?
Yeah, that's a good question too. You're right. We've switched a lot of people around, you know, and I believe in promoting people from within.
Sure.
Because as each person builds continuity and understanding of the business, I think it helps them in other jobs. And we did restructure quite a few people in the last year, and I think it's really helped. And it's fun for me to watch some of these young, I call them kids, but they're adults, come into our organization and excel. And they've done a great job in the last year, and there's quite a few of them. So I think, you know, even though people and bringing people into the organization can be extremely difficult, I think it can be rewarding too, just to see the growth and the advancement. And every once in a while we get a smile on our face from a few people, even though, it's a lot of work and, but I think we're having fun at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little about, adding the different departments. So I know you kind of started out maybe a little bit heavier as a sales organization, and then it had to grow more into the operational side of getting the machines out and then adding kind of a bigger service department. Talk to me a little bit about that process and what that was like.
Well, I mean, I'd say for the most part, it's kind of demand. So when we start getting pulled in a certain direction and people are calling for parts, calling for service, it kind of forces our hand, so to speak.
Sure.
And so we've always wanted to get out ahead of that. And I think we have. But, I think the demand is what prompts us to be, more attentive to those types of needs. From the sales and marketing standpoint, it's kind of, you don't know how much business is actually going to be there.
Sure.
So obviously you want to market it and sell it. And so we've invested heavy in that side, anticipating growth, and so obviously you've got a lot of different parts of the business. You've got areas that we can be proactive or reactive. And I think being proactive as much as we can is definitely probably the best thing that we can do. Yeah.
Just trying to see as much what's on the horizon and being ready for that as opposed to waiting for it
exactly.
to come.
Yep.
Definitely. Well, what do you feel like has been one of your greatest successes?
That's a tough question.
What do you think just went really well?
I'd say my wife and my daughter.
Oh.
But, I don't know. At the end of the day, people produce their own luck, I guess.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that we've gotten lucky. I think we've got a lot of good people. My father obviously had been in this business for a long time. So he moved into the sales division about a year after I started the business. And we were able to bring on some more people that had experience. And so when you add certain people to an organization that has the experience, they can kind of take the ball and run with it.
Yeah.
That helps, because then if they're focused on the sales side of the business, maybe I can focus on the marketing, the inventory, the production, the service. And I think it's an assortment of things that have enabled us to have success. And it's really, I think, it's so easy for us. And we've had employees like this, and people start saying, hey, I did this, or, and so I think if we keep the we've all accomplished a lot in a short period of time. I'd say that's probably the biggest success that we've all had together. Is just where we're at today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, you work with your dad. So I know there's quite a few family members kind of involved in the business.
Right.
How is that been?
Yeah. There's pros and cons.
Look at the look on your face. You're like,
Yeah. We spend too much time together, but at the end of the day, like, I can trust them, they can trust me. And so I think that helps. And I've seen a lot of partnerships go south over the years, and most of it has to do with greed. But if you can trust the people you're partnered with, and they can trust me, I think that's the biggest thing. And that's what we have to remind ourselves every day. And I talk about that a lot is, we're all better together instead of on our own. Because if we all decided to be greedy and separate, where would we be? We wouldn't be where we are.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So if you were going to do this all over again, start from scratch again, would you do anything differently?
I probably would have just stayed in sales.
Simplified things.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I would have, if I would have known how fast we would have grown, I would have probably built a bigger building or built something from the ground up to anticipate all the growth that we've had, because that's really been the toughest thing. And now that we're in 4 or 5 different buildings, there's pros and cons to that, but that's very, very difficult. As far as some of the accounting things that we've gone through in terms of inventory, now that I can look back and see some of the mistakes we made, I would have handled some of those things differently. And it's hard to explain here on the podcast, but because we keep a lot of inventory, if we don't track everything specifically by the part number per order and ship it when it ships, then our system thinks that inventory is still in stock.
Oh.
So without going into all those details, the numbers are very important. The part numbers are important. And, we want to print off an income statement or balance sheet at a moment's notice. We want that to be as accurate as possible.
Absolutely.
And so we've really learned the last 3 or 4 years, and obviously meeting with accountants, we've cleaned up that portion of our business quite a bit, because, we have to know where we're at. When you're moving that much product in and out, you've got to know what your numbers are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's something you feel like has really come to light in the last 4 years or so?
Yeah, I'd say so. We brought some employees in, and you take people for their word, and when you're told that, yes, I can handle the books or handle certain things, you assume that they can. And unfortunately, things uncover themselves later on, and you have to fix them. Sure. And, there's no turning back. Let's fix it and figure out how to move forward and make it right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when it kind of comes to your overall leadership. We've talked about, your company's been a pretty fast growing company over the last 10 years or so. How do you kind of manage that, on a personal level? Are there things that you kind of do every day? Are there things that you kind of keep in mind from like a leadership or management perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's tough. I mean, it can become overwhelming because even though we only have 30 employees, I mean, it is a lot to be responsible for. And so there's a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of conversations with my wife on the couch at night, trying to figure out what the next step is, but I think to be a leader, you've got to show up every day with a positive attitude and kind of have a vision for the company on where it's going. And I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. So a lot of my goals and ideas for the company, they come via email or, in small group meetings.
Sure.
But I think it is important to have new ideas constantly and kind of bounce those off the team members and see what they say. And I think, obviously, I think we're a lot better when we talk about ideas amongst ourselves and figure out what makes the most sense, because in my mind, it might make the most sense.
Sure.
And while I used to make more of those decisions when the company was smaller, I also have to think about more parts of, where we're at today. And the company's obviously a lot bigger, and there's more of an impact on everyone in every division. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do you feel like has been one of the biggest challenges from a leadership standpoint? Like, has there been things you have a hard time delegating?
Yeah. So I've been dealing with that lately. That's a good question. So I tend to try to do everything myself.
Sure.
And because it's easier for me to just do it instead of having to try to explain it. And so I've had to grow in that area and try to delegate and have confidence in people that they can do it. And I've started doing that more lately. So I'd say that's probably, one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, just letting go of certain pieces.
Right.
Yeah. How do you kind of overcome that?
Lots of conversations, lots of meetings. It's tough because if you've got employees there that are working 40 to 50 hours a week, you've got that much time.
Yeah.
And I obviously going on the weekends, but communication's the biggest thing. So as we've added more people to the company, communication has become the most important part of what we do, because you add, if we double once and then double twice and then double again, you've got more individuals doing what maybe one person was doing the whole way through. So if I start it, I can finish it. But if we have 4 people involved in, the same process, what communication are we providing, whether it be written, verbal? But that's probably the biggest challenge, and one thing that we've constantly had to work on.
Yeah. And I'm gonna get my stat wrong here, but I've seen somewhere where it's like for every person, it's like 5 communication channels. Like it becomes 5 times more complicated for every single person that you add.
I believe that
to a team.
Yeah,
and that adds up.
Yeah.
Quick.
Right, it does. Well, and there's certain things that we've done. There's a website called Monday.com that we've implemented. And with technology, you have to be careful, because if you try to implement too many things, you've got people that are 20 to, let's say, 65 trying to use that same program, and how well can they adapt to it. And on top of that, we want to create less work, not more. And so it's a fine line. And so we have implemented some more technology into our company that has helped streamline kind of what we do.
Sure. Do you feel like that's made a big impact? Yeah, like you said, streamlining and kind of making everybody more efficient so you can put a lot more through?
Right. Yeah, it has. So when we had 5 people, everything was word of mouth. And so we'd operate off an Excel sheet. We obviously had our billing system, which is pretty good for the size of company we were and still are. But I'd say being able to have that information out there constantly. So our production schedule, we plan that out, 2-3 months in advance. And all the information is received with the order up front. It's entered into our billing system. We invoice the customer. At that point, we have an individual who's done a great job. She puts that actually on Monday.com with all the details, and it says what production week it's in, what the ship date is, when we receive the money, the samples. I mean, there's so many things that go into what we do. And that system that tracks everything has been instrumental in really making what we do more efficient.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Right.
So when we think about kind of how you get ready for the day, you kind of talked about, coming in with a positive attitude. Is there anybody, that you kind of look up to from a leadership standpoint, or maybe you find inspiration in?
That's another good question.
Hitting you with all the good ones today.
Got to think about that. No, I follow a lot of people online. I've read a lot of business books, and, I've had some mentors that the crazy part is, and, obviously my dad, I've had a relationship with a long time. He's really good on the sales side of things. And I tell him all the time, I mean, he's probably one of the best salespeople out there, and he's been a mentor for me from that aspect, and I look up to him from that standpoint. looking back on my career, I never really had someone guiding me from the business aspect.
Sure.
So I kind of had to go outside and read business books, take a few business classes, talk to people. Another mentor that I bounced stuff off is my wife's dad. He owned a business and sold off a few years ago. But I wouldn't say I have one mentor, but probably many, many different areas that I go to for advice. Yeah.
So if you were going to give somebody one piece of advice, what would that be?
Man, it depends on what they want to do. I mean, what I've learned the last 10 years is you really want to have balance with anything that you do. And so whether it be family and business or hobbies or whatever your interests may be, I think creating a good balance, and don't put too much of your time in one area. I think when it comes to the business side of things, probably make sure that your message is well received in the marketplace. Find good people to partner with and to bring on your team with whatever your goals and objectives are. But don't become too consumed with one thing, because 10 years, 20 years into a business, there's going to be a lot more after that's done, whether you sell it, whether you get acquired, the company goes out of business. I've seen a lot of different scenarios play out with a lot of people I know. And at the end of the day, you've got family and a lot of other things. So I think a good balance is probably one of the most important things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. For more information on this episode, visit manufacturinggrowth.com.